Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. I'm Neha Jain, Senior Analyst with NASSCOM Research Team. NASSCOM, in partnership with Indeed and Aon, recently published an update to its 2020 report on gig, Future of Workforce, Decoding the Gig 2.0. We surveyed 70 plus firms to understand the gig workforce landscape in technology sector, current and future trends, and how the gig workforce is emerging as one of the levers for us to address the tech talent demand and supply gap. In today's webinar, we'll share a short synopsis of the report, followed by a discussion with our esteemed panel of industry experts. If you have any queries, please share the same in the chat. We will address the relevant question after the panel discussion. Thank you once again for joining in. Now I request Sashi Kumar, Head of Sales India at Indeed, Shilpa Khanna, Director, Human Capital Solutions at Aon, and Achyuta Ghosh, Senior Director and Head Research at NASSCOM, to join me for formally launching the report. We launched the report with the video. Ajit, please play the video. Thanks, Sashi, Achyuta, and Shilpa for launching the report. Moving forward, I would now like to take the audience through the key insights of the report. Ajit, please share the presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. What we have seen over the, compared to the last report that we did in 2020, that gig workforce is a growing phenomena. Before I get into the technology industry trends with respect to gig, I'll just quickly give you some numbers on how gig has progressed globally. So if you look at both white collar and blue collar, previous slide, Ajit. If you look at both white collar and blue collar gig workforce, the overall gross volume globally is expected to reach $455 billion by 2023, as per a MasterCard report. Similar trend, if you look at India, and India, the overall expected gig workforce is expected to reach 23.5 million by financial year 30. So gig is definitely on a rise, and the trend is similar if you look at what's happening globally as well as in India. Now, looking at the key trends on the technology side, what we have seen that, gig has become an important factor in closing the tech talent demand supply gap in India. So what we have seen that one of the key strategies that has supported in closing the gap is hiring of gig workforce. Apart from that, we have seen fresher hiring, increased hiring in tier 2 cities, increased subcontracting, also helping closing that gap. Now, as part of the survey that we had run, we asked the industry to define gig for the broader, industry. So if we look at how a gig role is defined, anything that includes a freelancing role, independent consultant role, project-based workers, temporary or part-time hires, they're all considered as gig roles. Now, when we look at the gig landscape in India, it encompasses external platform as well as some internal gig platform. So when we say external platforms, we're referring to platforms like Freelancer, Flexing It, which are actually solving for additional work for requirements of organizations. On the other side, organizations themselves also are running some platforms which focuses on maximizing utilization and meeting specialized skill requirements of their client. So they all started as platforms to solve for the bench that they had, but now they're using them as internal gig platforms where people who want to work on certain set of projects, employees who are looking for new opportunities can use these platforms for themselves. Now, as part of a report in 2020, we started a gig promoter score evaluation for the industry and the subsegments, which looks at how gig is being adopted, how well it is being adopted. And what we saw in 2020, that not all subsegments were in the zone of optimism, which is, they are open to hiring gig and the gig hiring is increasing. But now this year, what we saw was all the subsegments of the tech industry in India are part of the zone of optimism. Next slide, please. Now, if going into the survey insights, we've seen that, the overall gig workforce engagement models in India are maturing on the tech industry side. So what we have seen that 2/3 of the organization are now employing gig workers, which is higher compared to only 57% of the people organizations surveyed in 2020. So overall, there is more gig hiring happening across organizations. However, what we also saw that 65% of the organizations highlighted that the share of gig workforce in total workforce remains less than 5%. So gig is increasing, but the share of gig workforce remains small. And this is specifically true for larger organizations. If you look at the smaller organizations where the total number of full-time employees is less than 2,000, there the proportion of gig workforce is higher than 5%. So across survey that we have, that's the kind of difference we have seen. Now, if you look at the kind of trends with respect to how gig is being managed and is onboarded, so referrals came out as the top strategy for hiring gig workers. So 34% of the organization said they are using referrals as the top sourcing strategy. 85% of the organizations highlighted that, managing gig workforce internally is a shared responsibility, business and HR. However, if you look at the performance review side of it, then 70% of the organizations highlighted that business managers lead that responsibility. So the performance review comes under the business responsibility. Now, what has changed since 2020 is probably because of the hybrid work model that has come in. 90% of the organizations have really no location preferences when it comes to employing gig. So they're open to hire gig workforce across locations. On the other side, on the compensation, if you look at 40% of the people fix the compensation before the start of the project or at the beginning of the project. So that's a common trend with respect to compensation. Another interesting trend that we saw compared to 2020 is that the overall duration of projects have kind of gone up. So what we have seen that 1 out of 4 gig workers hired for a project, had a project duration of over 12 months. This year's survey, while what we saw the maximum duration in 2020 was up to 9 months. So that's the kind of shift that we are seeing, that organizations are becoming open to hire more gig workforce plus for higher duration as well. Next slide. Now, another thing that we are seeing is that gig workforce is overall creating impact. So both internally in the organization plus on certain larger fronts. So one of the key factors that have come up, is the focus on specialized skills. So of late, with new technologies, there have been specific demands with respect to certain skills, and that has actually been a key driver for a gig workforce. The other two drivers that have come in the top 3 are employee demand elasticity. So, organization, when they need new people for short durations, or, there is cyclicity in their demand, they prefer hiring gig workforce. That way, they are also able to optimize on the cost front. One thing that came very clearly this time was that traditionally gig was hired mainly for HR or support functions, but now we see a lot of gig being hired for technology roles. So if we look at the key top skills that are technical skills for which gig is being hired, it is software development, data analytics, UI and UX design. So if we look at how overall gig is creating impact, around a quarter of the organization said that they see increased efficiency in completion of tasks. There's reduced time to hire a new resource when they really need. Plus, gig is becoming very part of the overall hiring strategy. 53% of the organization highlighted that they are open to or have absorbed a gig worker as a full-time employee. Also, 90% of the organization are open to hire the gig workforce for their next set of projects where they might need similar skill sets. And another important, factor that we saw was 45% of the organization highlighted that they are hiring they're open to hire retired professionals as gig workers, while 7% of the organization said that, they have hired women as gig workers. So I think it's a good avenue for retired and women who are looking to, come back to work, return to work opportunities. So I mean, it's a good platform to get them started. Since we have spoken about the impact, there are certain challenges which organizations have highlighted, people have faced when they're using gig models. But before I dwell into that, they are mainly procedural and largely mitigable. So I think the top challenges that were highlighted were, ensuring quality of gig workers. The organization has seen a lot of hurdle when it comes to verification and security checks. They have also looked at, there's a lack of maturity when it comes to company policies related to gig. So these has been the key challenges with respect to hiring gig. Next slide, please. Now, in order to, mitigate or manage these challenges, there are certain best practices that we spoke to organizations and platforms, gig platforms, and we have come up with certain best practices. So I think one of the key factor that came in was, there is a need to work on the internal culture that the organization have. They have to be very welcoming for the gig worker as they are for their full-time employees. And this should be a priority across both business and HR. We just saw that there is a lack of mature policy. So I think clear policies needs to be in place. When you are looking at a successful gig model, it's very important that we break the whole role into task and smaller projects. That way, the gig model is bound to be successful, and the organization will be more comfortable in hiring the right set of resources as gig workers. So we need to have standard processes and tools to onboard people, and that has to be a common practice. Now, since this is new as an overall model, this is very new for the organization and people are still experimenting. So I think the best thing is we execute, we learn, and then we continually improve, whether it's about the way the culture is, whether it's about the processes that are set in, whether they are policies. So overall, certain recommendations for the industry. There's a need to formulate structured policies for gig. They also need to encourage retired and women folk to join as gig workers. In terms of security concerns, they need to look at maybe newer technologies which can solve for that. And there is a need for inclusive culture. On the gig worker side, we saw that specialized skills is the key driver for gig workforce. So I think they need to continually invest in upskilling themselves. There is a need, the one good way they can find new opportunities and, connect to the right set of organization is, they should utilize online gig platforms that we have. They need to follow highest standards in terms of whether it's business ethics, professional ethics, or security, because there's a lot of trust factor that gets involved when this whole model is put across by an organization, and that's very important. For the external gig platforms, I think what is most important is that we need to verify credentials of both the gig worker that they are referring to, plus the organization that are coming to their portals with the new opportunities. So overall, verification is very, very important when it comes to external gig platform. Now, if you look at, they can also help in, encouraging women and retired workforce to come and join. Quickly, just finishing off, in terms of the outlook, we see that, gig is bound to increase from, where organizations currently are. And that is quite reflective in the fact that 46% of the organization plan to increase proportion of gig workers from current levels. And top gigable roles that we see specifically on the technology side are software development, product development, data analytics, AI, ML, cloud computing, digital marketing, content management, sourcing and recruitment, UI, UX design, and data science. So I think gig is bound to increase, and it will continue to help us bridge the talent demand supply gap that we have. With that, I think we have the report launched and the links have been shared in the chat box. So everybody who's attending the session, please feel free to download the report. And it's across our website and community. The links are there. Coming up next, we have the panel discussion. And with that, I now request Nupur Isser, who's a consultant with Aon, to introduce our esteemed panelist and moderate the discussion. Over to you, Nupur. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nupur Isser. I'm not going to take too much time in introducing myself. If any of you has spoken to me in the past, considering the work that we do, very nice. If not, we can be in touch through other modes. I'll take 2 quick minutes to introduce panel. We've got about 40-45 minutes, and I know everybody is keen to hear from industry experts as to where we are headed with the gig workforce. Please join me in welcoming everybody whom you see on the screen. We've got Sashi Kumar, who's the head of sales for Indeed, Kiran Bala, who's Chief People Officer, SG Analytics. We also have Vivian with us, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for Movate, and Chandrika, who is the founder and CEO of Flexing IT, which I always end up pronouncing it the wrong way, which is one of the prime sources where we end up getting most of our gig workers from, and I'm sure all of you here have heard about it. Everyone, thank you for joining. I know it takes a lot to take out time and come for such things, but I'm more than happy to be here and hosting you. While we kick this off, if the audience has questions, please continue posting. We will keep a slight check on time, but we'll try and see as many questions as we can answer. Talking about the gig workforce, the insights that Neha just took us over. I was just thinking that we could probably just start with a little bit of background in terms of what gig has been. And Vivian, I'll probably start with you. I was just seeing whom to pick on first, and you just came up on the screen, so I thought I'll start with you. If you could just give us a quick insight on what you think has been the role of gig workforce in the organization pre-post COVID. What has been some of the major shifts that you've seen, and somebody who's been using gig workforce for a long time?
No, absolutely. So good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Vivian. I am CMO for Movate. Movate is a service provider. It's a CX and IT services provider. And as you understand, for service providers in this industry, talent is the core. Talent drives business, right? And with this context, now just let's examine this simple use case, right? Let's say you're onboarding a new customer. You need 200-300 people, which you have to, to service that customer with certain specific technical skills or product skills. Now, what would you do? You'll go out, hire maybe 300 people. That will take a couple of months. Then you bring them on board, wait for them to join. You put them through training. Training takes another 2-3 months. You've already had 5-6 months before they are even, live. Then you take them live. They won't be absolutely super productive on day one. They'll take 2-3 months to warm up and understand the client scenarios and so on. And by the time they're productive, you have 8-9 months are gone. And in this great resignation era, at that point of time, let's say some people quit. Right? This is the challenge that the industry is facing. There's a lot of stress. Now, just imagine as an alternative to this kind of a scenario, what if you had an option where you got this client, you need the resources, but now you have an opportunity to tap pre-trained talent, so who already have those skills from anywhere on the planet, right? And you can get them onboarded assuming all those checks and things are made, and say within 2 months they are on board and they are productive from day one because they are experts themselves. They don't need training versus having to train them. So the situation becomes so much more easier. So it's very compelling. So this is the primary use case of gig for us as a service provider. About 6 to 8 months back, we actually acquired a company called Directly On Demand. It's a Bay Area based company. It's a platform for gig experts with various technical skills. And there are several thousand gig experts on this platform through which we are servicing some of the biggest brands across the globe. And so these people are based across 60 plus countries, speaking over 100 languages. Now, I think essentially what has happened here is that we have created we have converted our fixed cost into a variable cost. These people are essentially people who can give 2-3 hours a day, maybe, or 10 hours a week. They are not ready for a 9-to-5 job. But here's an opportunity for us to tap into their skills and make them productive and get everybody across the ecosystem benefits in the process. Now, the game changer here is not that we are just using a gig model, and because gig model has its own constraints. The game changer here is how we blend this gig workforce with our traditional workforce and offer a seamless experience to our customer and service the customers and their needs, and have a situation where we can scale up or scale down based upon how the volumes are coming to us. Now, that's the flexibility that gig brings for you, because these people, in any case, are not expecting a full-time role. When the volumes are high, you onboard more. When the volumes are not there, they're not expecting it in any case. It's a part-time thing for them. So that's the power that the gig model has brought to us. We are seeing a lot of interest from customers, and we are seeing that it's really benefiting our business model and service model right now. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, Vivian. Thanks. Now that you're talking about the gig workforce and how it's about getting people where you can plug and play, I'll probably move to Chandrika, and then Sashi, I'll come to you so you can be a little prepared, because you both are pretty much managing platforms where we get most of our gig workforce from. So, Chandrika, talking about gig and how does this face up in the years to come? How do you analyze the role and emergence of the gig workforce and the platforms that you guys are managing? How has that played an important role over the last 2 years, and what changes do you see? You're on mute, Chandrika.
Thanks, Nupur. And I think I just also wanted to pick a little bit on, what Vivian said. We at Flexingit work with over 1,500 clients around the world. And the reasons we've seen a huge growth in the demand for gig, and this has been accelerated post-COVID, as Vivian also mentioned, is I think 3 or 4 things. The first is getting access to specialized skills. I think that is the number one reason our clients kind of come to platforms like us is, I need a skill set that either I don't have or I don't have enough of. Or I need innovation. It's a new skill set for my industry, and so I really need specialized skills. I think so. That's one. The second is the need for agility. You can get trained gig resources to be deployed on your tasks, deployed on your projects within a few days, within a few weeks, versus months that it might take you to hire a permanent employee or and get them up and running. And I think the third aspect is keeping costs variable, which I think Vivian also pointed towards, particularly for new initiatives during uncertainty, becomes quite critical. So overall, we've seen over the last several years, huge growth in demand for gig talent. So I think if I take the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a 30% CAGR. In India that we've seen, and globally reports talk about a 20% CAGR for the global white collar gig economy over the next few years, which is huge. And I think COVID has been a game changer because of, I think the underlying factors were always there. But with now all of us so comfortable with remote work, the openness of companies to work with gig talent has extrapolated. And so we find that even though we are now, most of us back to office, over 60% of the projects we see on Flexingit still are remote or hybrid, because companies are just very, very comfortable with this now, We also see that over the last couple of years, we've all become so used to technology. I mean, we're doing this as a webinar as opposed to an in-person event. All of us work on collaboration tools like Slack, which again has, I think, broken down a lot of barriers that companies had on working with gig and project-based talent. And I think a third big trend has been companies now have partners they can work with. Because some of the big challenges that even Neha pointed was, how do you get quality talent? How do you ensure that these are verified resources? And now you have providers, who are providing this support to clients. I think so. Given all of this put together, we're actually expecting that the growth in demand, for gig talent will only grow in the coming years. And just the last comment, and I know, Shashi will have his perspectives, is that we are seeing a similar growth in freelancers as well. And again, we've seen that, Flexing It has been around for about 7 years, and we've seen the last 2 years be a game changer on both the demand and the supply side. From a professional perspective, the number one thing we see professionals looking for is flexibility. And so whether that's, I want to do a project and then take time off, or part-time, it may differ for different people. And, gig work offers them that. They also want to build their own kind of brands as specialists, because one of the things that COVID, I think, drove home to a lot of us is that nothing is certain. There were so many layoffs at the beginning. And so a lot of people have realized that in a 40-year-long career, you will be a freelancer at some point. So I better be, on top of what my skill sets are, make sure I, dip my toes in the water so I know how to, be a freelancer if I need to be. So we've seen a big mindset shift, on the side of consultants as well. And as a result, a lot of younger professionals also now joining the gig workforce.
Great, Chandrika. Thank you. That's great. Shashi, what are your thoughts on this? And I also have a follow-up question on that then, and I'll ask you about that a little later.
Sure. So I think both Vivian and Chandrika have spoken about the gig and outlook from an employer standpoint, but why the market exists because there are people who are willing to, sort of participate in it, right? So what's driving that? I think one of the surveys that we did a few months back is Indeed. Essentially, we saw that 42% of people who were working were okay to take a pay cut if they got more flexibility. And 27% of all gig workers that we spoke to said one of the main reasons that they wanted to go gig was flexibility. I think increasingly all of us want more flexibility in our lives, and that can only contribute to making gig more attractive for job seekers who are really wanting or choosing to live a life which is got substantial amount of work, but that's not the only thing that they're doing. And I think there is a significant growth that we can expect from our survey and data. I think it says that by 2030, the gig workforce's contribution of the overall workforce will get to about 4.1% from currently, I think it's around 1.5, 1.6%. So there is a significant growth even over the next 7 to 8 years. And what's driving it? One, flexibility for job seekers. Two, availability of infrastructure for a lot of people being able to work out of places they're comfortable with, having access to great internet infrastructure is driving it. The third thing that is driving it is today, given the experience, like both Chandrika and Vivian said, given the experience of COVID, companies are more comfortable, people not working out of offices and working out of different locations. So that's given confidence that industry will embrace this trend. And I don't want to sort of repeat what both Vivian and Chandrika spoke about in terms of advantages for companies and how it helps them becoming more ready as they face their customers and service their customers better.
Great. I have a follow-up question this, and Kiran, I'll come to you in 5 minutes. I know I haven't asked you anything yet, but just give me the last 5 minutes. So Chandrika, Shashi, you both manage, like I said, gig platforms, which are fairly leading in what they do. Do you also feel that, and Chandrika, maybe you can start first, that these gig platforms will play a major role in the years to come, or do you see a lot of scenarios where the same talent gets rehired, or do you how does the platform work? Like how well paced is are both the platforms running, in fact?
No, happy to kick off, and then would love to hear from Shashi as well. So I think Neha, the survey itself talked about how 46% of companies, I think, plan to use more gig platforms. There was a BCG Harvard Business School study, I think a year or so ago, which actually globally had that number at 60% plus. As you know, as the intent to use platforms more and more as the years go by. And I'll tell you the reason why we see that actually accelerating is because platforms can add value to both sides. So for organizations, the biggest challenges, the top 3 challenges that we hear about when we talk to clients is, how do I know this is a trusted person, so that the quality and the work will be good. The second is, how do I know this is the best skill for my particular project, because a referral doesn't help me do that. I need a big enough pool. And the third is, how do I ensure things like data protection, confidentiality? And a fourth, which is, how do I scale? Because if you're working with 1 or 2 gigs, workers, it's easy. You can do a simple contract and it's straightforward. Imagine if you're having to work with hundreds or thousands of such professionals. Even the systems and processes to onboard, access, manage this pool becomes very, very complicated. And so we actually see that as companies turn to this more, the role of partners, which could be platforms or other kinds of partners, will just grow. Because it will be critical to have a seamless solution that adds value to business, but also ensures, a good experience for the freelancers, because you also don't want them to be upset if they didn't get paid on time, or if the contract didn't get renewed and then, they took up something else. And, it may be a small thing, but at scale, all these small things kind of can add up.
True.
So we actually see, as clients are doubling down, and we hear numbers from many of our clients that between 10 to 15% of their workforces they intend to have as flexible and gig in the coming years. They're increasingly seeing the value of having, a partner and a relationship they invest with to really develop this further. But coming to the side of the, the freelancers or the gig workers, actually platforms like, whether it's Flexing It or Indeed or Freelancer have a very critical role to play. Firstly, we are the business development partners, because we are doing the sourcing, bringing the projects onto the platform, verifying that these are genuine projects and genuine companies. We also help with marketing, because all of us are matching algorithms so that only the right freelancers are proposed, through the system for a particular project. So a lot of that, the messy part of running around, getting a project, and then having to sell your own skills, which many of us don't like, is taken care of, by the platform. And we guide on proposals, on fees, which are all kind of, pretty important to land your project. But in addition to the business development and marketing, we are all, the platforms are your admin back office in a way. We will invoice on your behalf, the finance team will kind of follow up on the payment, so that the freelancer can just focus on the work, which is what they want to do, and get the flexibility, that they want. And all the, the messy, aspects can be taken care of by somebody else. And I think a third element, which is also important for a lot of freelancers, is a sense of community, because you're working alone most of the time. You may have clients that you work with physically, but very often it might be remote, and that changes every few months. So, a sense of community, a sense of someone who is, thinking about your career, someone who can, give you opportunities to build your brand. I think that's another pillar that, platforms can provide a lot of value, to freelancers.
Got it. Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. Sashi, what are your thoughts on on the platforms?
Yeah, so Nupur, we are not specifically a gig platform. We are the world's largest jobs discovery platform, and the job could be a permanent, contract or gig or whichever way. From our perspective, irrespective of what kind of job you're looking for, whether it's gig or any other, what job seekers really look for is simplicity of search. If I'm searching for something, I shouldn't be putting in complicated search terms to get what I am. How can I easily get to where I am? Is the process of application easy? And 3 is this job verified? When I'm applying for a job, is this safe? Or am I going to, come across other problems? So broadly, that's what we try and do. And also, is information available more widely? As we see, not just gig, but different kinds of employments coming online, our primary aim is to see how can we provide job seekers with information in a way and method they're comfortable with. So one of the things that we've done is we've launched a Hindi language site. And in the coming months and years, we want Indeed to be consumed in the language that people speak at home, because that's essentially what you're most comfortable with, right? So that's the first step in the journey. Three, also be a place where job seekers, whether they're gig, perm, or whether they're looking for a gig job or a permanent job or a contractual position, they're able to research companies well, know what other people who are either working with them or have engaged with that company have to say about working with that company through reviews, and then engage with companies to take that forward. So broadly, that's what we are doing. The reason we are excited about gig, I mean, obviously we are talking about all sorts of positions. We're not specifically focused on gig. We see this as an exciting way in which employment will evolve in this country. And like we are a trusted partner for both companies and job seekers looking for permanent positions or for contractual positions, we would love for companies looking for gig workers and gig workers looking for gigs to have Indeed as a platform that sort of engage with each other on.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Shashi. I think I really like that point about multiple languages and how it's going to create an impact on the society. And Kiran, I'll now come to you. I know I told you I'll come to you in 5 minutes. So, in our study, we've also spoken about the social economic impact that the gig workforce creates, whether it's about hiring return to work women or hiring retired professionals, people with probably disabilities or some such thing. You've been in this field for very, very long. You've been in the HR world for very long. Do you, any examples or any insights on how you feel this would create an impact and how everybody here listening should be able to focus on this a little more? Yeah, I think you just...
Yeah, I'm just in mute. Okay, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Wonderful to be here. And I'll just, build on what's been said so far, during the last couple of decades with the expansion of technology, internet, urbanization, etc. And most recently, of course, COVID-19. I think this debate on future of work has become a hot topic for all of us, for employers, as well as, the prospective employees. I was reading that when World Bank published its report in 2019 on the changing nature of work, the contribution of gig workers for developing countries was, less than 0.5%. And today in India, like Shashi mentioned, it's already at, 1.6%. So I think this is a big shift that has happened. Now, when we talk of the social context, the social contracts that's going to change in the times to come. In my personal experience, what I'm seeing and what I think about this is this could be a huge value creator. And COVID has kind of dismantled a lot of the limitations people had, more from the mindset perspective than anything else. Really, I mean, because everything is 2 years, we saw how things could, for a lot of companies and industries, things could actually happen pretty smoothly from different locations. So this dismantling of, the limitations has opened up avenues to create value, because now you're able to reach out to the segments and, this challenge we are facing in terms of those pockets in the country. You have to go and fight for talent. You'll be around metros and you'll talk about tier 2 and stuff like that. But now I think the boundaries have gone. So anybody sitting in the northeast part of the country, just wanting to work 5 hours a day or 3 hours a day has an opportunity. And more than the person, the willingness of the person, I think now on the other side, there's acceptability. That has come, that it is doable. So I think it will have a huge, it can have, if we play it right, a huge impact in terms of value creation within our society. No more lopsided urbanization, no more concentration of talent in certain pockets, but the definition of talent itself and the way the work is envisaged today will change. So if I talk about, I'll just take another minute. If I talk about in our context, we do engage with a lot of gig workers, and this is more like project-based work. And but given that it's only for 4 or 5 months every year, gig workers give us that opportunity to kind of execute it, and And after doing it for years, it has become part of the system. So as a company, we are fairly open, and even the representation side, we are looking at, interestingly, before the session, we were talking about how do we include retired professionals when we, look at this project-based work. So to answer your question, to summarize, I think a huge value creation opportunity, and more companies would capitalize on it.
Great, great. Thank you, Kiran. Thank you. Vivian, I was just wondering, I was going through some of the discussions that we've had in the past about gig workers and how you guys are, Movate as an organization is pretty up and about in terms of hiring gig, like all the others. I wanted to just check with you in terms of what are some specific steps that you take as an organization to ensure that they integrate well the company culture, the ethics. The gig workforce does not really feel aloof when it comes to working on projects in an organization. Any insights on those?
No, I think this is a very pertinent point. And in fact, not just for gig, but for the entire industry, including the employees today. If you see, look at any service provider today, probably 50% of them have been hired post the pandemic, the outbreak of the pandemic, right? In the last 2 years. So 50% of the organization. Now, these are the, you can say half the organization has not really come to office, not really mingled with employees like with their teammates like we used to do earlier. There is already a sense of disconnect, the lack of engagement, lack of the connection that you feel as an employee for the organization. So this whole thing of employee engagement is in general, not just for gig, but for the whole industry. Of course, more so for gig, because these are most likely people who will probably never come to your office, right? And they, for all you know, might forever work from some part of the country or even outside the country. So there are obviously some things that we have put in place to engage them. There are frequent communications sent out. There's this whole community that we've created. There is an opportunity to chat with fellow gig workers. We try to do profiling of some of the most successful gig workers, take their video testimonials, share it, make sure they get some recognition. There's some sense of sort of connection. And also we try to gamify the environment for them, so that there is a healthy sense of you are not really competing, but also you are trying to do your best. And so there are all these things are being done essentially to ensure that there is some engagement with the gig workers, because otherwise for them it's like, okay, I have 3 hours today, I do something, I get paid then and there, as in I'm done, So otherwise, more than that, they don't necessarily look at the company. So it's very important to actually communicate what are your values, what is the culture that you stand for. Otherwise, tomorrow it's just like you switch from Swiggy to Zomato. It's like it doesn't make a difference. But to make them loyal, this engagement is very important.
So your organization does end up putting in things in place which probably help in moving the mindset from a transactional project oriented to more of being integrated into the whole organization as such, as an employee, and not really a gig workforce, right?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And as I said, sort of recognizing them, profiling them, sharing their thoughts, getting them to interact with each other, and so on. And there are also these virtual meets that are starting. The local people in certain areas, that's also being put in place. So it's just to create that sense of office, although there is no office, right? It's just a sense of community. You want to belong somewhere. That's very important, right? So this creates that kind of community feeling locally as well as globally.
Got it. Shashi, any thoughts on this? I know you have a hard stop in 10 minutes, so I just want to ask you as many questions as I can before you have to go. You're on mute.
I think Vivian's covered most of the points, not too much to add there. But like I said, companies need, as they look to engage with gig workers, look internally at their processes and systems and see if it is not too much in conflict. You're able to sort of integrate them and at least make them feel a part of what they're doing. Obviously, they're not an employee and not expected to be completely engaged, but at least part of the project that they're doing and have some sense of ownership and responsibility. And I think that's primarily a company and primarily a HR responsibility. So
got it. Yeah.
And if I may, Nupur, just one additional thought on that is that, we're starting to see, again, companies who intend to use gig at scale, start to think about this as a strategy, start to think about, okay, like I have an employee value proposition, I also need a freelancer value proposition. And that freelancer value proposition means obviously the pain points have to be solved. So onboarding, payment, all of that, laptops, emails, I mean, that's kind of just the admin. That obviously has to be sorted easily and should not be a problem for anybody. But going above and beyond that to say that, how can we make them feel as included as makes sense? So, can we have a structured onboarding experience? Can we assign a buddy? Can we, Vivian talked about, is there engagement through communication, through virtual meetups? So we are seeing, clients start to think about this, because as they see this as a long-term talent strategy, they need to literally tune everything, how they plan roles, how they plan policies, and how they plan even the onboarding and project experience for these independent consultants and freelancers.
Got it. Kiran, now that we're talking about this, and it seems to be quite a hot favorite of everybody, any particular things that you would like to, talk about in terms of how your organization and you as an HR professional have been making sure that these people feel integrated in an organization?
Yeah, so to put it simply, what we do at SG, that we do not differentiate between employees or project-based workers. So for us, the process remains the same, except for some of the formalities in terms of, the compliances and, the system that they'll be using, or if they're using their own, what are the compliance and stuff like that. Rest of the policies, pretty much the benefits, they're part of all the events, invites. So there's no differentiation. I think you can keep it as simple as that. The more layered you make it, it's very difficult to make people feel included in,
Absolutely.
As part of the culture. So that's what we do.
No, absolutely. Great. Nice to hear. So Shashi, I'll pose the last question to you. I know you have to leave early, but I wanted to know, for the past 2 years, we've been talking about the Great Resignation. There's always a demand supply shortage. They never go hand in hand, and so on and so forth. Do you think gig workforce is here to solve that problem? Do you think organizations can get benefit in solving that issue that they've been facing and are continue to face for a while to come?
What we've seen over the last couple of years is a increase adoption of digital technologies across the world. And as we see that, and it's only going to increase. So overall in the tech industry, if you were to look at trends that started from 2015, tech and STEM jobs have been significantly increasing year on year. In fact, when we, part of a survey we did in the quarter of April, May, and June, showed that 91% of all employers in the IT segment said they were hiring, as compared to 83% in the previous quarter. So that's something which is going to continue. And as this war for talent heats up, obviously companies are not going to be able to find everybody that they need. And the gig workforce is one way of trying to ensure that they're able to make up for that. That's just one part of the solution. The second is, like I said, job seekers and people are looking for more flexibility in their lives. Today, we've reached a situation where job is not the be all and end all of everybody's existence. The other thing we're seeing is a strengthening of infrastructure across the country. And when I say infrastructure, I don't just refer to internet, schools, roads, and other basic amenities. As they increase in tier 2, tier 3 cities, a lot of people will be comfortable working where they've grown up at, rather than moving to an unfriendly city where they may not have too many friends. So these are some of the trends at the job seeker end, which will ensure that there is going to be interest in gig jobs. And from a company standpoint, the interest will be sustained by a lot of project work coming up, a shortage of talent, and the need to hire in large volumes over a small period of time. So broadly, I think this is what is going to drive growth in gig workforce.
Great, thank you. Vivian, your organization uses gig a lot. Have you witnessed that, like I said, the demand supply problem that we've always had and continue to have you witnessed gig solving that issue for you to whatever extent possible, or wherever possible in whatever projects?
No, absolutely. And because I'll tell you, just to step back a little, the gig model that we're using is slightly different from maybe just bring somebody on board and then train them and then make them productive. These are actually, our primary use cases, we do technical support for a lot of global clients for products and things like that. Now, to support that product, so let's look at a simple example. Let's say you're supporting a game, say Minecraft, okay, and Minecraft, there are millions of gamers globally. They'll need us, somebody to support the gamers. There's a technical support required. Now, how do you do that? Let's say they're bringing a service provider to help with this. So one way is you hire people, train them on the game, and just make them understand the nuances of the game, and then once they do that, they start providing support to the gamers. That's one way of doing it. The other way is you just identify who are the alpha users or the top users of that game. Once you identify that sometimes the say the company themselves will give you that, in this country these are the forums or whatever. So what we do essentially is either take those lists, or there are enough communities all over the world, digital communities of Minecraft gamers. We just have to advertise and go into that digitally and then onboard some of those and just go with the message that you have 2-3 hours today to help your other fellow gamers and also make some money in the process. Now, see, the difference here is that you're already getting somebody who's a practitioner of that, who has spent countless hours already playing it. They understand the nuances of that inside out. You don't need training, they can train others. So from our perspective, it's all about just identifying those experts, onboarding them onto the platform, and the kind of support that they can provide. It's like, you get a customer to support another customer, literally. And the kind of empathetic support and service that they can provide is unparalleled, because they understand what are the issues that gamers are facing. So that's just one example I'm giving. So from our perspective, this is our model. We identify such experts who are out there for different products, different clients that we are supporting, onboard them onto the platform, primarily currently through digital means, and bring them onto this platform. Thereafter, the technology takes over. Now we have our own proprietary platform. There are 8 patents on it. It's there's a lot of AI that's used there, and everything from onboarding to getting them signing up, to their day-to-day working, their productivity, their metrics, security, everything is tracked through technology. Now, use of technology is very important, so that how do you ensure that your the gig expert is working at top productivity? They're not giving the wrong answers, they're not giving the wrong resolutions. There's for example, a peer-to-peer review mechanism. And there are points given, you get ranks. The higher ranked expert gets more opportunity to make more money and gets more say dollar per resolution than somebody who's now been consistently performing not very well. So everything is monitored and managed through a technology platform. Now that is core to this whole thing. It's one thing, like somebody said, is getting these people on board. How do we make them productive? How do they gel with your traditional workforce? And how do they provide that seamless service? That is key, and technology will have to be leveraged. Is going to play a big part in this process.
True. Absolutely, Vivin. I completely agree. And I think while doing the research, that's something that came out very well, how tech plays an important role. And I'm sure everybody here would agree. I know we're at the top of hour, but I'll just take last 5 minutes, Chandrika, Kiran, that's probably a question more for you in terms of skill sets. What has been the shift in skill sets that you guys have noticed in the last few years? Where do you think the gig workforce stands today as of niche skills versus basic skills versus what they were doing earlier? Maybe Kiran, maybe you can start, and Chandrika, you can take over.
Sure. So what I've seen evolve over the last few years is that initially, I think in the tech space, especially, the roles were more around UI, UX, and more on the design side, where people are more creative and they don't want to do full-time jobs, etc. But now it has become very mainstream. So today, I have seen data analytics. Say, for example, we hire a lot of talent in that space. Roles as I would say mainstream as data engineers. Even in the tech space, the developers were always in demand, but more so in the even the core marketing function or finance function. I'm seeing a lot of companies have outsourced their I've also got CFOs as gig workers, right? So it's completely open now, and the playground is completely open now. So in our space, we look more for talent in ESG space. Sustainability space is one area. The second is on the data analytics side. And third, of course, the evergreen, the UI, UX, and, more like creative work, which is for a certain period of time. But there's a shift clearly
Right.
in terms of being open to all kinds of skills now.
Skills, great, yeah. Chandrika, what about you?
Yeah,
you
just to
must be
build
feeling-
just to build on what Kiran said. So I think if I look at the last couple of years, our top 5 skills in demand, I would say our strategy consulting is always in demand. Somehow that's a consistently high in demand kind of skill set. But post that, technology and marketing are both like 2 and 3, and they are the 2 highest growth skill sets that we see on Flexing It, followed then by human resources and then creative, and design. And I think tech and marketing, I would say, have been the standout skills in demand over the last couple of years. And no surprises, I think, with particularly post-COVID, everything moving online, having to firstly have the technology to operate in a certain way, but then also to reach your customers. Companies are having to rethink. Technology, for us, we have demand for coming from even the more basic developers, coders, UI, UX, as Kiran said, but increasingly for the more niche skills as well, like data architects, applications of drone technology, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, of course, again, with the concerns around scams and so on. So we're seeing both the basic as well as the more niche skills and technology in demand. Similarly in marketing, there's been a big focus we're seeing on digital commerce, direct to consumer, performance marketing, because even traditional brands are having to think about reaching their customers in a very different way. And I think this is the outcome both of COVID, but also the startup ecosystem in India, where there's been a lot of interesting brands that have come up. So just to reiterate, I think agree with the mainstreaming. We see freelancing across all skill sets now. But technology and marketing have been the top 2 in demand over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I really find the drone one very interesting. I hadn't heard of it, and surprisingly, it didn't. Nobody responded to that when we asked them. But I really wasn't aware that there is a certain technology or a certain skill set available for drones as well. That's extremely interesting.
And I did want to make one comment on a topic we feel very strongly about. And you talked about the social impact, and generally we feel that women are not leveraging freelancing enough. So there's multiple reports that will show that maybe in India about 20% of the active freelancers are women. Globally, that number is half. So half the freelancers are typically women, and in India we've seen how the labor force participation has been falling over the last several years, and so women are opting to step away from the workforce as opposed to leverage freelance and flexibility. And I think this is something that all of us as an ecosystem need to strengthen, because this is where the value one of the important levers of value creation is more women working. And freelancing can be, and gig can be, one of the strategies to help with that. And so that is something I think we should all encourage, build awareness, make opportunities available to women on this.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree, Chandrika. I think that's a personal prerogative as well, and that's the only way to drive it.
Correct.
Great, then. Thank you, everyone. I think this was a super insightful session. I think everybody has some questions which Neha will decide when to take on. But Chandrika, Kiran, Vivian, thank you so very much for being with us. It was absolutely wonderful to host you, and I'm hoping that we do more such insightful discussions in the years to come. Neha, I'll pass on to you for you to take this forward. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you so much, Nupur.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking time out for the session today. And I think because of paucity of time, we'll like to take these questions later, and maybe we'll reach out to all the attendees with the answers, and we'll reach out to the panelists also separately. So thank you, Nupur, and our esteemed group of panelists today for sharing the insights with us. We've got a lot of fodder for not only future discussion, but more importantly, implementation and way forward for all of us. So I think thank you, everyone. So for the audience here, we have already shared the links of the report in the chat window here, and we would like you to share your comments with us at NASSCOM research. So the email ID is research@nasscom.in. We would also share the link of the recording of this webinar with all the attendees. These will be available on our community portal, which is community.nasscom.in. So this is a platform where you can share blogs, white papers, and participate in discussion with experts. So we welcome you to explore and contribute to this portal. Do share your queries and suggestions, as I said, at research@nasscom.in. With this, we come to the end of the webinar. Hope you found this session useful. We hope to connect with you soon again. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.